Hello again, everybody. I'm Dan Roberts, the publisher of the Vegas Voice, and you are watching our Vegas Voice family. This month, I have the great pleasure of introducing one of our great columnists. They're all great, but some are greater than others, and that is our musical moments gal, Yvonne Cloutier. Yvonne, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, believe me, it's all pleasure. You know, one of the things I had in preparing for this segment was to say you're our oldest columnist, which doesn't sound right, but you're one of our oldest authors who've been in the Vegas Voice for a number of years.
I think it's been about 10 years.
It's been exactly 10 years.
Has it?
Yeah, because I looked it up.
Oh.
And, you know, one of the great things about Yvonne is that I added up all the columns that you've done. You've done 107 columns for the Vegas Voice. And I guess my first question is, how do you know all these topics, all these people from A to Z and everything in between?
Well, I listen to people. They say they want certain composers or bands or entertainers, and so I listen to them. And I think if there's something interesting about that person, well then, I'll pursue that. And it's research.
And what I didn't know until after you joined our family is that you have a fantastic history. And in terms of music, in terms of your abilities, talk a little bit about that. I think that's fantastic.
Well, let's see, I was born.
Well, okay, after that.
No, let's see. Starting with the first one, I don't even know. I can just tell you about some of them.
Mm-hmm.
When I lived in Wisconsin, I was an artist in residence. And the way I became that was one day that I was playing ragtime in Lake Nebagaman, where we had a summer home. And so then what happened was I was just playing along because I had my part in the show. And this man came up from the State Department, and he said, would you be interested in being an artist in residence and go around Wisconsin and give concerts? And I said, well, gee, that sounds like fun.
Right.
So I did that for about 2 years, I think. But I was limited because I also was at school, either teaching or being a principal.
Right.
So I had to kind of watch what I was doing.
Yeah.
So then, let's see, after that, I did a lot of my stuff after I left Wisconsin. I went to Arizona, and well, first of all, in Wisconsin, I started the Lake Superior Ragtime Society.
Right.
And that became very successful, and it still is going. In fact, it's being used now with the University of Wisconsin, university there in Superior, University of Wisconsin. And so it just has never quit. It just keeps going.
You know, it's something. And of all the musical genres, if you want to use it, you like ragtime, right? How did you fall into ragtime?
Well, I was going to school. At that time, I was teaching. And I was listening to the radio, and I heard The Entertainer by Scott Joplin.
Mm-hmm.
I knew nothing about it. I knew nothing about Scott Joplin, but I thought, gee, that song was going to be a hit.
Yeah.
And of course it was, because it was part of that movie, The Sting.
The Sting, sure.
Yeah. And so I thought I just have to learn how to play that. So I learned how to play that. And then one thing led to another. And then in St. Louis, there was going to be, no, not St. Louis, Sedalia, Missouri. They were going to have a big festival. So I inquired about that, and I went there, and I performed in one of their concerts, or several of their concerts, because it was a festival. So that just got me going. And then I started making my own CDs at my piano at home.
Yeah, and CDs of just a ragtime, right? Or
right, yeah. Well, then I got a little bit into jazz, but really mostly just ragtime.
But ragtime and jazz, again, you also have a biography.
Well, ragtime
Go ahead.
started before jazz, and then and it's a little bit different. Ragtime is very structured, and it is 3 parts, 4 parts, depending on the piece. And you do not, you don't swing it. Jazz, you swing.
Okay.
You know.
And if all the music, you don't do rap, do you?
The what?
Rap.
No, I don't do it. Are you kidding? I don't even know what it is.
You have CDs. You also have a biography. You did a biography on Scott Joplin?
I did a biography on Scott Joplin, and because I wanted to have my students know about ragtime
Right.
and Scott Joplin and all these wonderful ragtime people that, you see, back then, when in Scott Joplin's time, which was the early 1900s, late 1800s, blacks were not, they weren't considered to be very important.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody ever wrote about them. So when these people in New York decided to start something on ragtime, well, they looked for Scott Joplin's material and they couldn't find anything. They had to really search, go to relatives and, distant relatives and find who they were, who he was. And so that's how that started.
And the research part that you do, and you do a lot of research on all the different musicians that you play, do you enjoy doing it, or is it considered work? Go ahead.
A little bit of both.
Right.
When I did the ragtime thing for Scott Joplin, I had a sister who lived in Maryland, and she let me stay with her while I went to Washington, D.C. in the
Right.
Library of Congress, and I researched Scott Joplin. And I did research, and it was so much fun. But then I just kind of, okay, I'm going to get to it. I'll get to this someday. All right, yeah, I should get to this. Well, have you started chatting? Well, I haven't started. I, kind of did.
Mm-hmm. But by doing the biography, that's something of somebody who really nobody knew of.
No.
And again, the movie helped
But
build
I
his
wanted my
popularity.
piano students,
Right.
not my piano students so much as I didn't have piano students at that time, as my students in school. I want them to know about ragtime and this wonderful man, Scott Joplin. There was nothing for children.
Nothing at all.
So I wrote, the book that I wrote is really on elementary school level, but anybody could
Right.
read it because it's interesting for anybody.
And again, the topics, I started reviewing all the articles that you've done over the past 10 years, and I was amazed by it. You have everybody from Chopin to Mamas and Papas,
Yeah.
to Frankie Valli to Perry Como.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you researched some interesting guys. Paul Robeson was somebody.
Oh yeah, I just recently did him, and oh my goodness, he not only was an interesting man, but that voice of his, I've never heard of such a beautiful voice.
Right.
And when I researched him and saw all this music of his, I just almost cried
Really?
because it was so beautiful. So he's one of the people that I really admired.
And obviously he was ahead of his time because he was black and he was discriminated against.
Oh.
He really had a hard time in the United
He had
States.
a very hard time, and he eventually just left the United States and went to Europe and mainly Russia, and then eventually participated in music over in Scotland. And the Scottish miners were very big with him.
Right.
And so he went there, and then he went to England, and he could play Othello in the opera.
At Shakespeare, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Shakespeare.
go ahead.
Because over there, a black man could kiss a white girl, but of course he couldn't do that
Not here, no.
So he stayed there and performed and did his work there, and then eventually he did come back to the United States, but he spent most of his time there in Europe because that's where he was honored and recognized.
And you've been doing our columns, again, for over 10 years, 107 articles, musical moments. You also do it for Sun City Anthem, is that true? For the TV.
Yes, I do musical moments for Sun City Anthem. And sometimes I use the same one and sometimes I don't.
But we come first, right?
Yes, of
Okay, as long as we
course.
come first,
Of course.
that's the only way to do it. The reason why I say that is that your columns have been now recognized not only by the Vegas Voice and by myself, because I knew from day one how talented you were, but the Vegas Voice belongs to the North American Mature Publishers Association, known as NAMPA.
Yeah?
Now, I thought mature publishers was a pornography thing, but it's not. I want to assure you it's not. And what they do is they honor different columnists for their work. And I'm very proud to say that you won. Again, you won last year. And you won for Best Column in Music. And I think that's, out of everybody across the country, you have it right here. I'm gonna hold it up,
Okay.
if I may. I'm gonna hold it up again. Yvonne won again. She won last year, and she won again this year. And I'm just gonna read what the judges wrote. Her musical moments columns are refreshing looks at established cultural touch points. The surprising history of Old Lang Syne that you did for us in January, and Liberace, which you did, they're good examples. And this is just one reason why our Vegas Voice family is so thrilled to have you as part of our authors, as part of our columns. And I want to give this to you
Well,
that you can
thank
hold
you.
on forever and ever.
Oh, I will frame it.
There you go. And I thank you. And Yvonne, again, just in the time that we have left, I just want to thank you, really, because everything you've done for the Vegas Voice.
Well, I want to thank the Vegas Voice.
No,
And I think if everything collapses, there's always the Vegas Voice to go to.
oh, there you go. That's very nice of you. Yvonne, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my
And
pleasure.
This is Dan Roberts for the Vegas Voice and our Vegas Voice family. And we'll see you next month.